It's been a while since we've spelunked into the belly of the beast, so let's take a deep dive into an area close to the ship's stern. We're headed to spaces located beneath turrets 4 and 5 handling rooms. However, due to the complexity of reaching them, we'll need to divide them into 2 separate tours. This first one will take us to second platform, where compartments are reached in a typical fashion that requires multiple ladder climbs to reach them. The second video goes all the way to the bottom to the hold deck. Access and movement there was extremely limited until recent changes were made. Let's get started on the main deck with the first plunge to second platform. We'll use one of a number of deck hatches and ladders to descend to second deck. We'll then walk a short distance aft in the port passage to frame 103 to another deck hatch that will ultimately take us to the first platform. We'll be on third deck once we're at the bottom. From there, we'll step over the hatch combing behind the foot of the ladder and continue down a vertical ladder to the first platform. This entire portion of the deck is dedicated to the handling rooms and magazines that serve 14-inch gun turrets 4 and 5. We won't spend any time here since these have already been toured and discussed in previous videos. However, it is important to us because we need it to reach 3 different trunks that serve as access to groups of compartments that are isolated from one another by major watertight bulkheads. You're about to see a lot of paint failure and corrosion caused by decades of exposure to flooding and high humidity. It was caused by conditions created by the Navy when the ship was prepared for donation in 1948 and a general lack of understanding when she was set in place in San Jacinto the same year. Also know that staff and volunteers have performed heroic work over the 70 years that followed to save her in spite of a severe lack of resources. Fortunately, the ship is now in dry dock and permanent solutions are being applied by Battleship Texas Foundation using more than $60 million in funding from the state of Texas and more from private contributors. However, there are a lot of repairs that must also be made that are not covered. This is where you can show your support by using the link in this video's description to go to the Battleship Texas Foundation's web store. Once there, you can purchase memorabilia, including items made from the ship's structural steel and wood deck. You can also make direct contributions that are tax deductible. Okay, let's climb down our ladder to second platform and look into some storage rooms. Unlike most areas on the ship's lower decks, there is no permanent division between starboard and port compartments. Instead, there's a door and a centerline bulkhead that can be closed to isolate the 2 sides during most conditions, or open to allow easy movement of men and materials. We'll start in main issuing room D17P. It looked pretty trashy when the photos and videos were shot in 2019, but for good reason. Trash and clutter was staged in this room prior to being hoisted up hatches and off the ship. We are in D17P, so this is main issuing room. It's located below the number 4 handling room, frames 104 through frames 110. We're looking outboard toward port. Pan around to forward. We do have a desk, moderate amount of piping, and a lot of small shelves. I will walk around to see what's behind these. It would appear to be more cubby holes and shelves. Looking forward, our next stop is through an open arch to D15P GSK stores, where we can see racks containing hundreds of small bins that could store small hardware and parts required to maintain the ship. Entering D15, marked as GSK main stores. Looking aft, we are still on the second platform, starboard side, frame 104 through 110. Looking aft, outboard is to the right on port side. Left is inboard. As you can see, just numerous storage cabinets. Turn going outboard. And this is the limits of that room. We can then pass through the bulkhead's watertight door on the opposite side of D15 into D17S to see even more of the hundreds of small part bins. We are now entering D17S, from GSK Stores. This is starboard side, frames 104 through 110. We're looking outboard towards starboard. As we swing, we're looking forward. There's a major structural support. As we walk forward, we can see that the forward portion of the compartment is largely empty. There are compartments below these on the hold deck, but they can only be reached through a different trunk farther aft. So we'll put that off for a few minutes. Let's now backtrack by climbing up to first platform, where we will walk back to a trunk between turrets 4 and 5 in their powder handling room. Descending the trunk ladder takes us into a series of magazines that originally stored shells and charges for the 5.5-inch gun mounts close to the ship's stern. The rooms in their hoist were repurposed over the years to provide storage for 3-inch, 20mm, and 40mm anti-aircraft guns as the 5-inch guns were removed. We entered D18M when we reached the bottom of the ladder, a 40mm gun magazine. We are in D18M, looking aft. We're now looking port. This is a 40mm magazine. Let me verify that. Yes, this is a 40mm magazine. Here's a 5-inch hoist converted to handle 40mm. We're now looking forward, panning around to port side. We'll now move through a door in the port bulkhead into D19MP, another 40mm magazine. We're entering D19MP, 40mm magazine, second platform, port side, much like the one on the other side. Once again, there is a modified 5-inch hoist used to take ammunition up top. And another door, a second door leading into yet another magazine. We then walk back into D18M to the opposing side of the bulkhead and into yet another 40mm magazine, D19MS. This is D19MS. Starboard side, second platform. This is also a 40mm magazine, and we're now looking aft. And this is a modified hoist to carry ammunition up top. And here is a hatch, or a door rather, on the aft side. You can see there is a passing scuttle in the door. And we are now looking forward. D21M is immediately aft of D18M and can be entered through any of 3 doors. This magazine served as storage for 20mm automatic aircraft cannon. We are entering D21M from a forward door. Ahead is simply a structural arch where the room continues. To the left is places for ammunition storage, and again to the right there's ventilation in the overhead and large structural steel behind these rack frames. Entering through the structural arch, we continue into the rest of the 20mm magazine. We have doors on both the starboard and the port side that lead back into 40mm magazines that are on either side. The wood deck has been removed. We do have fire alarm up here. Other than that, a rather bare room. Okay, we are now looking starboard to another door that leads into the starboard 40mm room. That covers the magazines that can be accessed within this area, but I want to walk back through them to point out a very significant feature that runs through 3 of them.
We are standing in the aft half of D21M 20 millimeter magazine, and you can see this shaft traveling from stern forward, and periodically spaced on it are bearings with grease nipples. We'll step through the arch into the forward half, and we can see that the shaft continues and yet even farther forward into 40 millimeter magazine, where it continues to travel forward and through the forward bulkhead. This is the steam steering shaft going back to the rudder compartment.
Okay, back up the ladder to first platform and then back to trunk D38 that lies between turret 5 handling room and aft steering. If we descend 1 deck to second platform, we see another set of secondary weapons magazines. The first we enter is D24M that serves as a 3-inch magazine and handling room.
We are in D24M and P. It's a fairly narrow space. This is a 5-inch magazine directly above aft emergency diesel generator room. The deck is seriously wasted, so we will be stepping only on sound items. There are 2 5-inch hoists in here, one there, and as we pan around, this is aft, and port here is the other. Heavy structural members above this are part of the support system for the number 5 handling room. This is a chain fault to manually operate that hoist, and there is one for this hoist also.
There are 2 doors in the forward bulkhead of D24M. The left takes us into D22MP, the catapult charge storage room, where explosive charges that operated the aircraft catapult were stored. Shells were likely moved to the main deck using the 3-inch hoist in D24M, then carried to the catapult by hand.
This is D22MP. This is a magazine to store catapult charges. We will not walk on the deck, directly on the deck. Possible serious wasting issues.
Back in D24M, we can then use the right door in the forward bulkhead to enter D22MS, an additional 3-inch magazine.
D22MS, indicated on the plans, is a 3-inch magazine. Once again, the deck is heavily wasted. We're looking inboard toward the port side of the room. The wooden decking has been removed, exposing the steel plate and essentially purlins or standoffs for the wood deck. We do have brackets for portable stanchions, and of course air ducts that can be sealed for Z conditions, and certainly flooding valves.
That completes everything we can see on this portion of second platform, so we'll end things there. We'll post a new video in the next few days that takes us deeper to the whole deck level, where we'll see more than magazines and storage spaces.